Alright, I'm going to start a new video series for JavaScript interview questions. In this series, I'm going to answer different popular JavaScript interview questions and I'm going to discuss, answer them, but it will not be in any specific order. You can jump in and you can start watching any portion of the video. So, this is the first episode. I hope you learn a lot in this video series. So, let's get started. Alright, this is a very common interview question: how to check types in JavaScript. To answer this question, let's first understand what is a type in JavaScript or what is a type in any language, right? You might be familiar with syntax like let a equals to 6, right? So in this case, a is a variable and we are assigning the value 6. Now this value 6, this has a type, right? This is a number type. Or if you are assigning something like hello, this is a string type. So this type of types are called primitive data types. So in JavaScript, if you have any constant or variable that is holding in a primitive data types, you can check that with type of operator. So suppose you have a variable a equals to, or I can call it my var equals to some string like hello. Now you want to check the type of this string my var, right? So you can use type of operator, type of my var, and that will return string. And suppose you assign something like my var equals to 5, now it will become number. If you check type of my var, it will become number. So this is one way to check the type of a variable. This only works with primitive data types like number, boolean, string, all those data types. But suppose you have something like object, so let my array equals to new array. Okay, I'm creating one array here. Now if you check with type of my array, you can see that this is object. So we have primitive data types and we have class types like object types. So whatever it is returning, that type of my array is object, that is actually true because array is also an object. But how will you know the actual type? Like suppose you have a class and you're instantiating an object and creating an object from that class. How will you know that? So for that, we have something like we have instance of keyword. Now I have my array. This is an array. If you use type of my array, this will return object. But if you check my array instance of array, it will return true. So it is like I'm checking if my array is instance of this array or not. And also if I check my array instance of my array instance of object, that will also be true. So with this keyword instance of, we can check in which class it belongs to. So the short answer is using type of, you can check any primitive data types. And so actually sometimes you will not know what interviewer is actually expecting you to answer. It is just a primitive data types or any type of objects. So in that case, you can also answer that if your type is object, you can also check the constructor, like from which class it is instantiated from. So for that you can use instance of. But suppose you don't know which class it belongs to, it is just checking, right? But suppose you don't know, in that case you can use my array dot constructor. So that will return one function that is called the constructor function. So it acts like a class actually. Now suppose if I have a simple object and if I check instance, if I check dot constructor, so I'm going to create a new object. Let obj equals to object, then obj dot constructor. It will return the object constructor, that is the JavaScript's native object. So I hope you understood how to answer this type of questions. Like for primitive data types, it is type of operator. For object types, type of operator will return a simple object, so you will not know actually what in which class it belongs to. So for object type you can use instance of, or you can use constructor. All right, next question: what is a callback in JavaScript? To understand the concept of the callback, you should know what a function variable is. In JavaScript, suppose I have a variable var, variable name my var equals to, let's say I can have some number like 5. Now in JavaScript, not only string or number, a variable can store a function as well, and that is one powerful feature of JavaScript. So in this case, it can be something like my var equals to a function, and in this function you can do anything. Like for example alert something. So let's take a look at this. This is a function and we're storing the function in this variable myvar. Now what is a callback? Suppose you have another function like any function name my function. This function is doing something and then you are calling the function with my function. Now you must be knowing that in any function when we are calling it we can pass some params like I can send some value like 56. This my function will receive that value 56 in maybe some number n, something like that. But what if you pass a function? So function is also a variable, right? We can pass it. So in this my function I can pass my var like this one, or let's call it callback function. In this my function, when we're calling this my function, I am also passing the callback function, and this my function will get that function in this variable fn, and after doing some stuffs it can call this function. So in this case this callback function will be called and alert will be displayed. So what is this? Why you are calling it as callback function? Well, it is nothing special. Callback function is just a regular function, but we're telling it as a callback function because I want this function to be called back after some point of time. And this this function will decide when to call that callback function. But when we're using this function like my function, we are just passing the function variable, and we are telling this my function that okay, after doing some stuffs or whenever you need, you call this function back. So that is why it is called callback function. It's so simple. All right, so this is a callback function, but what is the practical use of this? For example, suppose I have something like let's write some practical use case like set timeout is one JavaScript core function. So in this set timeout function, the first parameter is another callback function. So instead of creating a variable, I'm directly passing this function, and then the second argument is some timeout, that is, let's say 1000 millisecond. So we are telling the JavaScript runtime to call this callback function or any function, just we are naming it as callback function, to call after some time, after 1 second in this example. So that's it, that is callback function. Okay, next question. Pass by value versus pass by reference. Let me give you some context here. When you're passing some value in a function, what we're actually passing? We're passing in a value or a reference. So that is the question. So let me give you an example. Like I have a function called sum, and it is accepting two params, that is number 1 and then number 2, and it is returning number 1 add number 2. Now when you call the function sum, you pass two value, that is 5 and 4 maybe. So what it will do, it will just add up 4 and 5 and it will return 9. So you can clearly see that we are passing some value here. What if I create a variable like var num1 equals to 4? Now instead of passing the value directly, I can pass this variable num1. Now what do you think about this one? We are passing any reference or a value. Even though I've written this number here while passing the value, we are actually passing the value only. So this sum function will never see this variable. It will see the number 4. So this is passed by value because we are passing the value here. But what if we have something like object? Suppose we have an object like obj1 equals to some complex object. That object has something like a equals to 4, then b equals to 5, something like that. So you can see that this is one object. Now if I pass this object over here, obj1, now in this case what is happening? Are we passing the entire object as a value? No, that's not possible. In this case we are passing by reference. The reason is that when you are creating this object1, it is creating this object in the memory of the JavaScript, in the RAM, and the reference, the memory address, that is stored in this variable obj1. Pass that obj1 here in this function. This sum function will receive that address or a reference to that actual object in the memory. Because think about it, an object can be a very big object. So if you want to pass that object as a value, we have to serialize it to some binary digits and then pass it. So there will be a lot of complexity, right? So that is why it is designed like that, because you already have the object in the memory somewhere, right? So you just pass the address of that memory location. If you program in any lower level language like C, C++, then you can actually access the memory location. But in a language like JavaScript, there is no way to access the actual memory address, but we can only use the reference to that object. So that is how it works. So to answer this type of question, that what is passed by value and what is passed by reference, and you can give some example. So in that case, yeah, the answer will be like, if you are using any primitive types like this number or string or boolean, the primitive types, then the pass by value happens. And when you are using and when you are using objects or array is also an object, and then the pass by reference happens. And also when we're passing by reference, that also means that you are free to change the object. So suppose you're passing this object by reference, so you're just passing the reference of this object, and after that, if you change the value of this a and b, then the function will receive that updated value. So if I have to give some example, like it's not sum, let's call it like log the value, and it's going to receive one object. After some time, let's say set timeout, after 1 second, it is going to log object dot a. Now suppose you are calling log the value and then object 1. So after 1 second, this a will be printed, that will be 4. Now immediately, before 1 second, right, immediately if you change the value of this object obj1 dot a equals to 100, then after 1 second, this log the value will receive the updated value. So in this case, the 100 will be printed. So you can understand it, right? If it's a pass by value, then there is no way to change the value that you have passed already. But as it is a pass by reference, we're just passing the reference of this object. We can just change the object, we can mutate the object anytime. So I think it's clear what is pass by value and pass by reference, right? All right, let's go to the next question. What is JSON? JSON is JavaScript Object Notation. So this is the full form of JSON. What actually is a JSON? JSON is a data format that looks like a JavaScript object. So suppose you have an object like obj equals to this object, and this can have some value like name equals to some string, and then there can be another value like id equals to some number. So this is one object. Now suppose you want to save it to the database, or you want to transfer it to some other client, some things like that. So for that, you need to convert this object, because object is nothing but some values in the memory of the JavaScript, right? But if you want to actually save it or transfer it over the where, you have to convert it to string or some serialized format. So for that, you can choose any data format, like XML is one, YML is one, and the most popular one is JSON because it looks similar to JavaScript object. But before converting, let me create one JSON file. So let's call it my JSON.json. The file name extension should be JSON. I have this my JSON. Now I'm going to create the same object, that is name and ID. So for that, I have to use this curly brace. See, this looks like JavaScript object, right? And it should have key and values, like I can have name equals to. Now you can see that this is an error because for JSON, property keys must be double quoted. So that is one difference from JavaScript and JSON. In JavaScript, you can ignore adding the quotation here, like this is also correct, this is also valid JavaScript, but in JSON you have to add that quote for any keys. But if it's a number, then you don't have to add the string, the quotation. So I can add something like this number and this works. So you can see that it is quite similar to the actual JavaScript object, and that is why it is called the JavaScript object notation. So you have the JavaScript object and you want to stringify it, you want to make the JavaScript object one string, and that becomes a JSON. And also there is a quick way to do it. In JavaScript we have this native object that is JSON. Okay, so JSON has some functions like JSON the stringify or JSON the parse, something like that. So JSON the stringify will convert this object to this JSON. So if you convert it obj, now this will return a string. There is a JSON string for that object. Now if you console log it, okay, let's run this code. You can see this is printed, so it is converted to, so this object is converted to the JSON. Now there is another function called JSON.parse. So this is the opposite of stringify. So stringify converts the JavaScript object to JSON, and JSON.parse is the opposite. It parses the JSON string and converts into on JavaScript object. So to test that, let me create one JSON string equals to. So I'm going to write a very simple JSON string that will just have one variable a equals to 5. This is not a valid JSON, right? Because we don't have a quote for the keys. So I can add the quote. So this is one escape character, that is slash, because I am writing this quotation inside another quotation, right? Inside this JSON string, inside this JavaScript string. So that's why I added this slash escape value. But suppose we want to, in JavaScript actually you can use single quote also. So in that case you don't need to add these escape characters. All right, so this is one JSON string. Now if I parse it, if I parse this JSON string, this will convert to object. So now if I console log it, okay, let's execute this. Now you can see it is creating one object and it is printing it. But actually there's no use of just printing the object, because actually when you're printing the object internally it is just converting to string again. But you get the point, right? Suppose you have a string, or suppose it is stored in the database, or it is stored in the file system, or you are getting it from some server as a string, then you can convert that to JSON object and you can use it. And you also need to know a few things, like in JSON you cannot write any function. In JavaScript you can write some function, then function, but you cannot write this kind of function in a JSON, because there's no use of writing a function in a JSON, because JSON is just a data format. You are just storing some data. You cannot call anything. It is not in the runtime. All right, that is a quick explanation of JSON. But if you're a JavaScript developer, you need to use it all the time. And now let's go to next question. Okay, how to split and join strings in JavaScript? There are two questions here actually. How to split a string and how to join different strings. So these are very useful features in JavaScript. That is, you can easily split a string and you can easily join strings. So let's see how it works. Suppose you have this string and this is a comma separated string, you can see, and I want to split this string into multiple smaller strings based on the comma, right? So string has a method called split. Now if I split with comma, see what I'm doing here. I'm splitting it and passing a separator, that is comma. So it is going to search this comma in this entire string and it's going to split it automatically. You can see that it is returning one array and that is having splitted strings, smaller strings, and it is splitting with the comma. You can also pass a regex, but I'm not going to complicate things. So for now just understand it. This is the split. You can easily split any string with some operator, separator. Okay, then what is a joining? So joining is the opposite. Like you can split the string with the separator and you can also join different smaller strings into a big string with some separator. Okay, I have this array. Now I want to join this. How to do that? So array has a method called join. You can join with a comma or anything. I'll just add some dash, okay, hyphen. Now if I join this, you can see that it's creating a bigger string with that separator. So it's simple, split and join. This is a very simple JavaScript methods, but it is used everywhere. When you're writing a JavaScript code, you need to use it everywhere. So it is very popular methods, splits and joins. Alright, that's it for today's video. If you liked it, please hit like, and if you want to see more videos like this, you can also consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.